निवासिनि विष्णु विलासिनि जिष्णुनुते.
So today this article recommended by Neener is about Mauryan Brahmi inscription in Mahasthan. Mahasthan is the ancient Shaivite hotspot, basically that significant place, which is today called Mahasthangarh in Bangladesh. Okay, and this is the place which was also spoken of by Rajarshi Nandi in the Vad podcast, as far as I remember, when he was saying that Bengal basically used to be a hub of Shaivism, and there used to be people from Shaivites from Kashmir, Tamil Nadu, South India, the different parts of South India, all of them coming here, and scholars of Shaivism from Bengal going and discussing things and even spreading their teachings in southern India, in Kashmir as well. So that's what we will learn today, because this is Mauryan Empire. So and Chanakya does say that Bengal region was an administrative unit under the Mauryan Empire. So you see that idea that Hinduism started in Bengal only after 800 AD, etc. That crap is absolutely baseless because of this particular topic. This interesting inscription in Mauryan Brahmi was discovered at Mahasthan on the 30th November 1931 by the Baru Fakir of the Mahasthangarh village in the Bogra district of Bengal. Mr. G.C. Chandro, who was then Superintendent Archaeological Survey Eastern Circle, acquired it for the department, and it was for some time lying in his office at Calcutta. Under the orders of the Director General of Archaeology, it has now been deposited in the Archaeological Section, Indian Museum, Calcutta. Arey bhai. I've been to Indian Museum, Calcutta when I was very young. I've been there 2 times. I think it's the biggest museum in the country or in the continent, I think. At least that was the statistic we used to answer in quiz contests. I don't know if it is the case now, but the main attraction back then for going to Indian Museum was all the non-cultural bullshit. The biggest skeleton of a whale, and a mummy was brought there for a while. We went to see that. I saw a mummy up close, but these things were never taught to us. Soon after the discovery of this plaque, a very brief account of its contents, I am told, was printed in the columns of a Bengali daily of Calcutta called Bongo Bani, though I have not seen it at all. The account, which has appeared in the Liberty, dated 22nd April 1932, I was able to see, but it does not touch any important detail of this epigraph. My transcript and account of it are based upon an impression sent to me by Dr. Hirananda Shastri, who has basically compiled this epigraph here. Sent to me by Dr. Hirananda Shastri, government epigraphist for India, and a photograph forwarded later by Raj Bahadur Dayaram Sahani, Director General of Archaeology in India. Recently, when the plaque was deposited in the Indian Museum, I was able to inspect it personally and found what I knew long ago, that it was impossible to exaggerate the importance of carefully examining the original whenever possible, as impressions and photographs are often not enough to enable a scholar to prepare an accurate transcript. This is what Sanjeev Sanyal has been foaming at the mouth, talking about repeatedly ever since he became viral on internet, ever since he wrote his books, ever since he has been getting called to literature festivals and stuff, seminars, etc. Okay, ये चीज़ बोल के संदीप सन्याल थक गया है कि हमारे हिस्टोरियंस प्राइमरी सोर्स नहीं पढ़ते हैं, प्राइमरी इंस्क्रिप्शंस कहीं ज़िंदगी में आंखों के सामने देखा भी नहीं है, कोई पिलर सामने से जाके देखा नहीं है, ठीक है, जियोग्राफिकली कोई जगह विजिट नहीं करता है. ये सब कुछ इंपॉर्टेंट है व्हेन वी आर टॉकिंग अबाउट हिस्ट्री. यू कांट जस्ट रीड अ जर्नल और एन abridged translation of the transcript and then write a fucking entire theory and do politics over that theory. The inscription is incised on a piece of hard limestone which measures something by something, which we can't see here. Though it is in a fragmentary condition, yet it is possible to determine more or less approximately what was its original extent. तो ये इस book का जो हाल है, that's similar to what he's describing of that Mauryan tablet. That no complete line was engraved after the last line of this fragment can reasonably be inferred from the space remaining blank at the end, which is not less than what we find between any two actual lines of this epigraph. Again, a careful examination of the stone shows that the original surface of its sides is still traceable here and there, and that many letters consequently cannot have been destroyed from the sides. Thus, while etam is the last word of dhanyam, last word of 1.2, Dhanyam is the first word of 1.4. It is thus clear that the sides of the inscription have not been much damaged. One or two letters at the most have been obliterated from each line, whether at the beginning or at the end. Line 1 of our fragment cannot, however, be really the first line of the original inscription. I see. Okay, line 1 of our fragment cannot, however, be really the first line of the original inscription. Yes, because ऊपर का तो टूट गया होगा. But even here we may be pretty sure that more than one line could not have been effaced. Okay, तो एक से ज़्यादा line उड़ नहीं गया है. That's the best part. The fragment as it is contains 6 lines of writing in Brahmi character of the Mauryan period. The alphabet remarkably resembles that of the Ashokan records. The only difference that is perhaps worthy of note is that the vertical parts of the letters ta, pa, ha, ra and sa is a bit more prolonged than is generally seen in Ashokan inscriptions. Our record again has one peculiarity which it shares in common with the Kalsi. It's Kalsi, right? Kalsi recension of the 14 rock edicts of Ashoka. It is in regard to the letter sa, which occurs also in a form resembling sha. Okay, so हिंदी में क्या बोलते हैं पता नहीं है. हमारे बंगाली में तो concept है if it's just sa, it's we call it talobbo sha, and if it's definitely sha, sh, sha, then it's danta sha, danta sha. Okay, दांत लगा के जो बोलना पड़ता है. And talabba means tongue, I think, or gums. That these two forms do not mean two different letters in our inscription, namely sa and sha, is quite certain. The word samragyenam occurs twice, once in 1.1 and once in 1.3, and whereas the first letter in the first case is a clear sa, it has the form of sha in the second. There can, however, be no doubt as to, okay, this word is absolutely unreadable here. Xerox किया है, Xerox करके इसको destroy कर दिया है. God knows what's written, being the word intended. The sure-looking letter must therefore be regarded as a cursive fortu of sa, and has consequently to be read as a sa and not sha. Similarly, in regard to Sulakhite and Suatiya Yakasi, the first letter in each one of these words is evidently Su, but whereas the former character is distinctively Sa, the latter looks like Sha. This Sha-like form is noticeable as remarked above in the Kalsa copy of Ashokan Rock Edicts. Up till and including Rock Edict 9, the regular form of Sa is alone noticeable. In Rock Edict 10, the Sha-like form occurs side by side with the regular one, but the former is almost invariably prevalent in the subsequent edicts. Perhaps Hulch is not right in heading, in reading invariably as Sha, as it seems to be but a cursive form of the regular Sa. As regards the language of our inscription, it is the same as the one used in the pillar edicts of Asoka. It was the language of the Madhya Desha influenced by Magadha, or rather the court language of Magadha. Okay, Nina is saying that the important bit comes later. Okay. Yeah, here we have to notice, okay, let's get to the important part later. Then we have, on the other hand, dental sa. Yeah, so this is Dantasha in Bengali. Dantasha only as in the pillar edicts and not the palatal sa, which is Talabosha. Palatal, yeah, which is the third characteristic of Magadhism according to the Prakrit grammarians. Okay, lol. So Bengali Pride movements, all your language and grammar letter ka variation, this is also coming from Magadhan Empire. So if you are trying to conserve Bengali language, you are trying to conserve the Prakrit version of Magdi language, Magdi Prakrit. The locative singular ends in C and never in E. As regards to orthography, we have to note first that the doubling of consonants caused by assimilation is not graphically shown. We have also to note that the constant use of perpendicular stroke as a virama or stop, okay, Bengali में जिसको दाढ़ी बोलते हैं, perpendicular stroke as a virama, stop, to mark the words and the clauses of the record. Instances of such upright niyamas may be found in the Kalsi and Sahasram edicts of Ashoka, though they are sometimes inserted meaninglessly. To give one instance, Kalsi Rock Edict 13 has the following: Atharasha, oh अच्छा ये पेपर है, Atharasha Bhishita, Devanam Piyasha, Piyadashine Lajine. In our inscription, however, it seems to have been properly employed to punctuate divisions or sentences. Okay, the transcript of our record is as follows. Okay, ये पढ़ के फायदा नहीं है. We have seen that the inscription is a no, let's just check this out. Nena Samvam Gyanam Galadanasa Dumadina Maha Mate Sulakhite Pudana Galate Etam Nivahi Paisati Samvam Gyanam Cha Dine Tatha Dhanyam Nivahisati Dham Gatiyaike Deva Tiyaikasi Suatiyaikasi Pi Gamdha Gangdha Kehi Dhani Kehi Esa Kothagale Kosam Bhara Niye. They are saying it's a Brahmi, Mauryan Brahmi, but this was spoken as Magdhi Prakrit, because Prakrit is not distinctly a specific separate language, right? It's the Prakrita version of whatever the language was spoken during those days. Just like today, Sanjay Dikshit does not speak the same Hindi as a random gunda on the street or any, but there's some Arabic influences, uske wajah se difference hai. But other than that, even then, in any language, what the scholars speak, that language is not spoken in the same way in any language by the commoners, right? The way I speak Bengali, the way Mamata Banerjee speaks Bengali is not the same way as Amartya Sen or Abhijit Banerjee speak Bengali. So that is the difference. कि संस्कृत लैंग्वेज कौन सा है कि एक जो हमारा भाषा है, सी वी डोंट हैव एनी स्पेसिफिक ट्रांसलेशन फॉर द वर्ड लैंग्वेज. ओके, in our context, bhasha means whatever is the language. The name of our language is basically bhasha. The name of our languages is not Sanskrit, Prakrit, etc. वो नाम बाद में आया है क्योंकि हम लोगों ने इंग्लिश सीख के इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज सिस्टम हमने डाल दिया इंडियंस के ऊपर और इंडियन हिस्ट्री के ऊपर, इसलिए. बट भाषा का एक संस्कृत वर्जन है, एक प्राकृत वर्जन है, और भाषा ही हमारा लैंग्वेज है. विच इज़ वाई इन इंडोनेशिया देयर लैंग्वेज इज इट सेल्फ कॉल्ड भाषा इंडोनेशिया, विच मीन्स भाषा इंडोनेशिया का भाषा. इंडोनेशिया का भाषा का नाम क्या है? इंडोनेशिया का भाषा. Okay, in that has to be kept in mind when we are talking about language and bhasha in India as well. So bhashya karna is bhasha. What you use to do bhashya commentary and to converse is the bhasha itself. So the name of your bhasha is not bhasha or language or Sanskrit or Prakrit. Now there is a version of your bhasha which is Sanskrit, meaning संस्करण हुआ है जिसका, and उसका एक प्राकृत बोलते हैं, मगर उसका एक प्रकृत वर्जन है. इन बेंगली इज मोर अंडरस्टैंडेबल. সংস্কৃত যার সংস্করণ হয়েছে and প্রকৃত ভাষা. Okay. We have seen that the inscription is a fragmentary one. We cannot therefore entirely do without some amount of conjecture while interpreting it. The record, how I would much rather this person do the conjecture because he has actually seen the inscription in front of his eyes. The record, however, can be treated best by considering it line by line and word by word. The fragment begins with the two letters Nena. The word originally must have been either Sasanena or Vachanena. More probably the former. So probably Sasanena. If we carefully examine 1.1, which is Samvam Gyanam. Okay, so Nena Samvam Gyanam. If we carefully examine that word, at the most one letter could have preceded Nena, with which our fragment opens. Thus, whether this word was Sasanena or Vachanena, the first letter of it could not have been engraved in the present 1.1 of the fragment, but rather in the line preceding it, which has now been lost. Similarly, the words Sasanena, some lost words, Vam, Gyanam, Galadansa, punctuated by the Virama of 1.1, make no complete sense as they stand. They surely must have been preceded by some words in the line previous, which is now broken and which told us what was the exact nature of the sasana and who the ruler was that used it. Okay, so here, yeah, I forgot this. If it's nena, it probably means sasanena. Sasan means jiska shashan kal tha. Okay, so who was the ruler, whose rule it was. The next word is savagyanam as it stands. The same word which occurs in 1.3, samvagyanam, where the anushvara after sa is distinct. Anushwar meaning the M, which we write as M in English when we are talking about Sanskrit or ancient Indian texts, but in Bengali we pronounce it as ang. So savagyanam would be pronounced in Bengali as savagyanang. All mantras are pronounced as ang in Bengali. Om even, not om. So, the word may be equivalent to the Sanskrit samvargyanam, which however yields no good sense. It may stand for vargyanam of the class fellows. Yeah, vargi. Oh my god, this is great analysis. It may stand for vargyanam of the class fellows or the clansmen. Different vargya. डिफरेंट वर्ग से वर्गीय आ रहे हैं. वर्ग तो क्लास है, वर्ग में जो रहे हैं वो लोगों को वर्गीय बोला जाएगा. ऑफ दिस वर्ग. ओके, ग्रेट. Which however, okay, so it may stand for vargyanam of the class fellows or the clansmen with sam prefix to it, samavargya. So meaning maybe equal vargas or maybe equally, whatever the context was of the main content, main intention of the text, to say that they were equally important from all those vargas. Okay, different people from different vargas were sama. Sam always means equality, as far as I know. So samavargya. But this prefix sam remains meaningless and inappropriate. Besides, what is meant by saying that something was given by sasana to galadana of the clansmen? Galadana of the clansmen. Okay, so galadana, does it mean servitude, deference, or human sacrifice? If we take it literally. So galadana of the clansmen. So galadana of the samavargya. Holy shit, this can have many meanings and interpretations. Who were these clansmen? This is a fascinating paper. Thanks for recommending this, Neenar. Who were these clansmen? Why is their name not specified? It will be better to insert another anuswara this time after va and read the whole word as samvagyanam which means of the samvagya or tribe. The insertion of an anuswara after va cannot be unjustifiable in view also of the fact that in 1.2 we have Pudana Galate, which obviously stands for Pumdana Galate. Pungdana Galate. Pung means male form, obviously, or men in general. The Vamgya is like the Vajjis. The name of a tribe can scarcely be doubted. Okay, so Vamgya is like a tribe. And just as the confederation of the different Vajji clans is sometimes called Samavajji. Okay. That way Sam is used here. Sam meaning all. Sampradaya. Samapradaya. It is not impossible that the various Vanga clans were similarly summed up under the name Samvamgya. I see. Samvamgya. Vamgya. We shall dilate upon this point later, but what we have here to note is that the second word in 1.1 is in all likelihood intended for Samvamgyanam, which yields good sense and which can also be read as such, having regard to the fact that in old inscriptions as Anuswara, an Anuswara is not unfrequently omitted. So it's omitted pretty frequently. Neenar is saying the fun part will start in 87, okay? But here we will discuss these things as well because I'm getting to learn a lot of language concepts as well. The third word in 1.1 cannot be read with certainty as the upper part of its letters is damaged. It reads like Galadanasa or Galardanasya. It seems that Galadana was a leader or chief of the Samvamgyas, to whom something was granted by Sasana. Sasana is whoever is the leadership, जो शासन कर रहा है. Okay, so Galadan Danyasu एक किसी का नाम था वो, I mean he was offered so many people's galas or what. The next word, though a little damaged, is pretty certain and reads Dumadina. Then followed two letters, the first of which is partially preserved and the second completely lost. Thus, first is either Sa or Ma. Okay, I forgot to finish one point. So, Rabindranath's main conclusion is that Bengal needs to wake up from this delusion that they are the enemies and embrace Marathas as an united, as an ally, in an united Bharat. Okay, you can check out my full analysis of his poem called Shivaji Utsav. There he has explicitly explained his view in the poem itself that Bengalis failed to understand when... Rabindranath Tagore in fact goes one step further. He says when the Borghese were attacking, it was a call for unity from the Bengali Hindus as well. It was a call to action that you also fight for me, you also rise up against your Muslim kings. But Bengalis failed to understand it. But don't fail to understand it now. That's what Rabindranath is saying in that poem. Okay, so he's further on this than me. I still have some sympathy, and so saying that okay, let's forgive and forget what happened to Bengalis as a byproduct, as a collateral damage. Rabindranath is saying no, अरे भाई वो तुमको call to action दे रहा था, तुम समझ नहीं पाए. It seems that Galadana, okay, ये तो हो गया. Then followed two, okay, SRM. These two letters together with the first two, namely mate of the second line, formed one word which is marked by a virama. Thus, the letters intervening between this and the preceding virama may be read either as Dumadinasa Amate. So Amatya, probably Amatya meaning a bureaucrat, or Dumadina Mahamate. Oh, okay, Mahamate. The former alternative is less preferable. Okay, so this person is saying that Dumadina Mahamate is preferable because the force of Sa after Dumadina is undetermined. Is it a genitive termination or a part of an individual's name, whatever that may mean? So if Amate is written after a space, then it probably means Amatya. If the former is the case, it makes no sense. If the latter is the case, according to the language, oh my god, this page is gone. Maar diya. The next batch of interpunctuated letters is Suati Yayi Suati Yayi Kasi P. But these two words by themselves do not form a clause and have therefore to be taken along with those that follow. Of these, only what's this word? Gamda. Wait, I'll zoom in further. Yeah, Gamda. I see. So it's Gamda. Interesting. Of these, only Gamda. So Gangda. This is M with that dot. So it's basically an Anuswara, right? So it would be Gangda or Ganga. I don't know how to pronounce this. Of these, only Gamda has been preserved in 1.5. At least two more were originally incised in this line, but they have now been destroyed. The next line, which is the last preserved one, has lost at least two letters at the beginning and three at the end. But those that have been preserved can be clearly read as Yikehi Esa Kothagale Kosang. Okay. Kothagale or Kothagale, is this how it's supposed to be in Bengali? Kothagale would mean Kothaye Gele. Where did you go? Is it similar to that meaning? The lacuna may be tentatively filled up as follows. Gamda kehi, dhani kehi, esa kotha gale, kosang bharanye. The whole may thus be rendered into English when there is an excess of plenty. Okay, so kotha gale. Okay, not similar. When there is an excess of plenty, this granary and the treasury may be replenished with paddy and gamdakas. Okay, gangdakas. Here, two things are mentioned. So, Kothagale means Kosam is Kosha is treasury, that I know, go downs. So, what would be Kothagale or Kothagale? So, excess a filled up granary, or where that granary. What's the meaning of this exact word Kothagale? I wish we knew. Esa Kothagale Kosam. Bharanya means, yeah, plenty or excess of plenty. What would be then Kothagale? And the treasury may be replenished. So Kothagale is granary and treasury is Kosam. Yeah, probably that way. Okay. Okay. Here two things are mentioned. Kothagale, गारम ग्रैनरी. ओके, ये मीनिंग दिया हुआ था, मैं फालतू में इंट्रोस्पेक्ट कर रहा था, कॉन्टेम्पलेट कर रहा था. कोठागले इज कोष्ठागारम, ग्रैनरी, एंड द कोशा इज ट्रेजरी. या, corresponding to kosha we have the mention of gangdaka, which means a coin of the value of 4 cowries. Gangdaka. Okay, so Gandaka, a coin of the value of 4 cowries. The yikehi with which the last line begins can thus be easily restored to dhanyikeshi. Dhanga ye gaya ur gaya hai, as it corresponds to Kothagale, and as we know it has already been mentioned as being distributed among the Samvangyas. What we have thus to understand here is that as soon as the time of superabundance returned, they were to remit Gangdaka coins into the royal treasury and paddy into the royal granary. ठीक है, जब prosperity वापस आएगा तब तुमको और टैक्स देना है. Okay, 3.4 refers to the doling out of paddy to these people. Right. So जब कोरोना आएगा तो तुमको हम पैडी देंगे, वैसा बात है. It is thus perfectly intelligible why at the end of the record they have been asked to return the corn. But why should there be any mention of Gangdaka coins at all at this place, as they have not been referred to above? Were the Gangdaka coins anywhere mentioned as being distributed among the Samvangyas, which they were expected to pay back into the treasury with the return of prosperity? We have said above that the first original line of this inscription has been lost, which told us about the nature of the sasana granted to Galadana or Galardana of the Samvangyas, Samvangyas, yeah, who is mentioned in 1.1 of the preserved portion. And it is not at all unreasonable to surmise that this sasana referred to the Gangdaka coins, which were handed over to Galadana for disbursement among the Samvangyas, and which they were asked to refund as soon as the day of plenty dawned upon them. The inscription may thus be briefly summed up as follows. It appears that some ruler of the Mauryan period, if not of the Mauryan family, had issued an order to the Mahamatra stationed at Pundranagara, which is our Pondra, Pundravardhan, etc. Those places. Western West Bengal, middle center West Bengal, or southwest West Bengal. Pundranagara, with a view to relieve the distress caused apparently by famine to the people called Samvangyas, who were settled in and about town. Although Pundranagara was different in different places at different times. Okay, I wonder what was Pundranagara in the Mauryan period. That was specified in our live stream with Bangali Itihash, and I have forgotten that. It's impossible to remember. What was Pundra? I think it's Central Bengal only. Although Tamralipta was also part of Pundra at one point, so maybe entire South Bengal, where there was civilization, because most of Kolkata, South 24 Parganas was a jungle anyway. Kolkata was a small village, that too in medieval era or post-medieval era. Before that there was no real people living in these places in extreme South Bengal. So if not Mauryan family, some ruler of Mauryan period had issued an order to Mahamatra stationed at Pundranagara with a view to relieve the distress caused apparently by famine to the people called Samvangyas, who were settled in and about the town. 2 measures appear to have been adopted to meet this contingency. The exact nature of the first is not clear, as the first original line of our record has not been preserved, but it may be surmised that this measure consisted of the advance of a loan in Gangdaka coins to Galadana, who presumably was a leader of the Samvangyas. The Mahamatra of Pundranagara was entrusted with the execution of this order. The second measure consisted of the distribution of dhanya or paddy from the granary. So, see what Narendra Modi did during Corona was basically a very Chanakyan thing to do, or very Mauryan thing to do. And instead of giving monetary stimulus packages like USA did, which Dr. Subramaniam Swamy recommended, which Dr. Abhijit Banerjee recommended, but Sanjeev Sanyal and all did not want to do that because it would cause inflation, which it did in USA. Okay, so Galadana, who presumably was the leader of Samvangyas. Okay, the second measure, ye to ho gaya. A wish is then expressed that as soon as these measures are carried out, the Samvangyas will be able to tide over the calamity. Okay, Samvangyas will be able to tide over the calamity, yeah. With the restoration of profusion and affluence, they have been asked to return the coins to the treasury. Okay, जब तुम फिर से affluent हो गए तब ये थोड़ा वापस करो tax के तौर पे. And the corn to the granary. In other words, to pay the state back in kind and cash. Beautiful. We may therefore translate the text as follows. To Galadana of the Samvangyas, granted by order, the Mahamatra from the highly auspicious Pundranagar will cause it to be carried out, and likewise paddy has been granted to Samvangyas. The outbreak of distress in the town during this outburst of superhuman agency shall be tided over. When there is an excess of plenty, this granary and the treasury may be replenished with paddy and Gangdaku coins. We now turn to other matters revealed by the critical consideration of our epigraph. The inscription stone, Mr. Chandra told me, was originally picked up near a tank, not far removed from a high mound. Okay, mound meaning stupa. Dhibi bolte hain jisko Bengali mein. Which we were discussing in the last day's live stream as well, that my pet conspiracy theory is that Shushunia Pahad is probably an ancient temple of some sort, possibly a Ram temple, because nearby is a place called Ayodhya, mysteriously. But because that's what happens when something is hidden or a place is abandoned, dust settles on it for years and years and centuries, and then it seems like a mountain. It seems like a mount, then it seems like a hill, then it seems like a mountain. All ancient South American pyramids were also thought of as mountains and hills. Then they were dug up and found out to be pyramids. Okay, even our Mundeshwari temple in Bihar had become a hill of a sort, and then people thought it's a cave, and then they dug up the entire place and saw it's a goddamn temple. So where excavations were being conducted and which is presumed to contain the remains of a stupa. तो अरे तो वो माउंट खोद के निकालो, क्या स्तूपा है देखते हैं अंदर. Do watch a movie called The Dig on Netflix. It's a Netflix original movie. Beautiful background score. वो जिसने वोल्डेमॉर्ट का रोल प्ले किया था वो एक आर्कियोलॉजिस्ट का रोल प्ले कर रहा है. It's a real life story. Okay, power is back. It's about a bunch of British people during World War II excavating a Viking ship, small ship, but it was used as a burial ground for a great Viking king as well. Beautiful movie. But there you can understand the nitty-gritties of how to dig up a mound of sorts. And that mounds may end up having something insane inside it. Whether any characteristic parts of a stupa were recovered in this work of exploration is not known. I am informed that no such definite results have been achieved. On the other hand, we have to note that the words Kothagale occurred in the last line. The word Esa shows that the stone plaque was originally stuck into the granary itself from which paddy was doled out. And if our inscription stone, when it was discovered, was lying not far from its original place, the monument which is being cleared of debris at present may after all turn out to be not a stupa but the royal granary into which the plaque was originally fixed. Holy shit. Our historical gain from a critical study of this record is by no means inconsiderable. In the first place, it places beyond all doubt that the identification of Pundravardhana with Mahasthan, which was proposed by Cunningham half a century ago. Fuck. So Pundravardhan is in goddamn Bangladesh. The Pundravardhan of this era specifically, because Pundravardhan kept changing places. Okay. In this account of Bhasu Bihar, 4 miles to the west of Mahasthana, he remarks that the Buddhist remains at that place correspond both in description and position with those noted by Yuan Tsuang and Huansang, and at the Poshippo monastery, which was situated just 20 what can't read it this, or 4 miles to the west of the capital of the country of Punnafatana, which transcribed itself to Punnavardhana, but it is intended for Pundravardhana, obviously. This city, says Cunningham, the pilgrim places at 600 li or 100 miles to the east of the Ganges near Rajmahal, now in Bangladesh. और ये वो नवयान बुद्धिस्ट को ये पता नहीं चलता है कि पूरा का पूरा बंगाल जब बुद्धिस्ट था आज के दिन में नहीं है तो कौन शत्रु है. ब्राह्मण ने बांग्लादेश में जाके इनको मुस्लिम बना दिया. Now this description corresponds exactly with the relative positions of Rajmahal and Mahasthan, and the latter being just 100 miles to the east of the former. The suggestion of Cunningham was shortly thereafter confirmed by the Karatoya Mahatmya. Yeah. We learnt of this in the Bangali Itihash book as well. It's pronounced as Karatoya Mahatto. Okay, Karato was a river. Mahatmya meaning what is the meaning and symbolism, significance of this place. Just like Devi Mahatmya, which has the Mahalaya chants, shlokas, mantras. That is in Devi Mahatmya, right? Yeah. So this is Karatoya Mahatmya, which was first published 40 years ago. This Mahatmya mentions many holy spots which are all found at present in Mahasthan. But the Mahasthana, though it calls itself Karatoya Mahatmya, purports to describe the sacred sites of Pundra or Pandravardhana Kshetra. It is thus evident from it that the present Mahasthan is identical with the old Pandravardhana. Now Mr. Prabhas Chandra Sen, who has edited the Mahatmya for the second time and for the Varendra Research Society, Varendra meaning North Bengal, Varendra Bhumi, rightly points out that the one verse, Varendra is the place where the Pal dynasty started, okay? It was started by a Brahmin king who became Kshatriya, changed his Varna. His name was Gopal. Now Mahatmya for the second time, Varendra rightly points out that one verse from it is cited by Sarvananda in 1159 AD in his Tika Sarvasya or the Amara Kosha, and two in the Smriti Chandrika, probably by Devna Bhatta, who is himself quoted by Himadri in the 12th century. This shows that the Karatoya Mahatmya is a composition which could not have been later than 1100 AD. Okay, right. We may thus take it that the identity of Mahasthan with Pandravardhana was known before the 12th century. Okay, but this identity is now placed beyond all doubt by what our inscription tells us. It tells us that two remedial measures to alleviate the distress of a famine were contemplated, and that the Mahatma of Pundranagara was charged with the execution of them. Okay, so when I'm going to make a separate video of this place, I'm probably going to name it Ancient Forms of Welfare and Taxation in Bengal by Mauryans. Ancient Taxation of Bengal by Mauryans. One of these measures consisted in the distribution of paddy from the royal granary, which, as shown above, must have been situated in Mahasthan itself, as the inscription speaks of it as Esa Kothagale. As the Kothagale was thus in Mahasthan, and as the officer who was to dole out paddy from it to the Samvangiyas was the Mahatma Mahamatra of Pundanagara, it is quite clear that Mahasthan is identical with Pundanagara. And this identity between the two is now established by evidence not of the 12th century AD, to which Mahatmya belongs, but of the 4th BC, to which our record has to be assigned. Fuck. Yes, this is clinching evidence that Bengal was an administrative unit. There's also already the fact that Arthashastra mentions Bengal as an administrative unit. Now there's a proof of welfare कि अच्छा तुम्हारा time खराब जा रहा है तो ये लो थोड़ा चीजें, थोड़ा welfare, and then return it in taxes. Fuck. So the second point of historical interest that we have to note is the manner in which the state in ancient India endeavored to combat the ravages of a famine. In this connection, one is reminded of what Kautilya says in his Arthashastra. Yes, Durbhikshe Rajabhija Bhakt Opagraham Kritva Anugraham Kuryat. Is that KU or Karyat? Durga Setu Karma Va Bhaktam Grahena Bhakta Sambhagam Va. During a famine, the king may show favor by giving gratis seeds, bija, and food, bhakta, जहाँ से probably भात का नहीं, that's anna Anna is also food. Maybe Bhat came from this concept of food, Bhakta. And Anna and Bhat is interchangeable in Bengali. So who knows which preceded which. Either he may carry out work in forts and on dams with the distribution of food, or he may distribute food or food gratis without exacting work. Yeah, this is what this part I've read in Arthashastra. It will be seen from this passage that the state in ancient times encountered the contingency of famine either by starting works of public utility or by a free distribution of food. And this is why I've been saying that Chanakyan times में कोशा था, treasury था. Famine होना बार बार शुरू हुआ after Mughals came, because those dumbasses had no idea how to run a state, how to run a country. सामने अन्न देखा ही नहीं है, भात देखा ही नहीं है, तो वो उस कैसे मेंटेन करते हैं, कैसे कंजर्व करते हैं, कैसे पता चलेगा उसको. And then British did it because of their own evil intentions, and Mughals did famine because they were fucking dumbasses. Neither of these, however, seem to be adverted to in our inscription. Okay, so encounter the contingency of famine either by starting works of public utility or by a free distribution of food. There is absolutely no mention of any public work being started in the interest of the famine-stricken people in Pundanagara. Mention is no doubt made of the distribution of paddy, but this paddy seems to have been given neither gratis nor in lieu of any work in the fort or on an embankment, but on the distinct understanding that it shall be returned to the state district granary as soon as the days of plenty and prosperity were restored. Here again, what was given to the Samavangiyas was not annam or boiled rice, okay, but rather dhanyam, which is unhusked rice, okay. In Bengali we call it dhan, and dhan ko agriculture में produce करके वो चावल बनता है. So dhan is dhanyam. So even here Bengali is directly deriving from Sanskrit, man. So annam is onno in Bengali and dhanyam is dhan in Bengali. Dhan khet meaning dhanyam kshetra, kshetra, an area. This paddy obviously must have been used as seed for sowing operations, and also when husked must have served the purpose of food. It may be now asked why money was at all distributed among Samavangiyas. In this connection, we have to remember that in East Bengal, where nature is so plentiful, a famine can take place only through inundation of a river, right? जो कि आज भी बहुत कॉमन है बांग्लादेश में. ये रिवर बैंक्स टूट जाते हैं इवन इन रीजन्स ऑफ बंगाल विच आर क्लोज टू बांग्लादेश. ये वो जगह का पद्मा गंगा अक्सर टूटते रहता है. Mahasthan or Pundanagara is situated on a river, namely Korotwa. And when a town is settled on a river, the floods caused devastations not simply to the crops in the fields but also to the buildings and huts which are perched on its borders. To meet this contingency, a money grant has to be made to the people whose belongings have been washed away or seriously affected by the floods. This is what we call an advanced civilization. Okay, ये हम जब advanced civilization बोलते हैं और कॉमीज स्मर्क करते हैं, क्या एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन, वहाँ पर सती चल रहा था, इसको बोलते हैं एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन. एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन में कुछ फ्लॉज तो होगा ही. आज जो एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन आज है अगर उसमें फ्लॉज नहीं है क्या? Someone can argue that USA has flaws because it has racism. I will argue USA has flaws because it has wokeism. तो no matter how advanced the civilization, it will have flaws. तो फ्लॉज की वजह से सिविलाइजेशन एडवांस नहीं था, ये इग्नोर करने का कैसा आर्ग्यूमेंट हुआ? बट दिस इज द लिटरल डेफिनेशन ऑफ एन एडवांस सिविलाइजेशन कि कितना प्लानिंग है और कितना प्लान का प्लान बी कितना है, प्लान सी कितना है, कंटिजेंसीज क्या है. पाकिस्तान का तो ये सब आज भी नहीं है. दैट इज वाई पाकिस्तान इज नॉट अ सिविलाइजेशन. तो by the floods, okay, whose belongings have been washed away or seriously affected by the floods. This is perhaps the only explanation that can be given of the disbursement of Gangdaka coins among the Samavangiyas. What again we have to note here is that this disbursement of money and this distribution of unhusked rice were made to this people without any interest. If they had been charged with any, there would have been some reference to it in our record. Or it may be that they were tacitly understood to return the money at the usual rate of interest. Yes, so see, that is why it's not going to create that perpetual inflation. They are going to return it. Perhaps ours is not the first known inscription which relates to the putting up of a granary as a fortification against scarcity of food. और ये सब भी पता चल रहा है कहाँ से? ये जो एक दो टूटा फूटा इंस्क्रिप्शंस मिल रहा है, कितना के ऊपर हम आजकल घर बार बना लिए हैं, कितनों के ऊपर से नदी चला गया है, कितने जगह के ऊपर से आज भी नदी जा रहा है. If you hypothetically stop the river and dig up the place under the river, you may find some insane things. because ours is a fertile land and people keep living there. People don't abandon places. And then there's the issue of so many things were destroyed and burned by Muslim kings. So there's, if we are just finding the tip of the iceberg, and the tip of that goddamn iceberg is enough to prove we had an advanced civilization 2500 years back. So imagine what the fuck is the rest of the iceberg. Okay, I'm too excited with this article. It may be asked, was it is in this connection we have to remember that is Bengal Karatwa ho gaya ye. So what again we have to note here is that this disbursement of money was not done with interest. People will return it with interest. Okay, perhaps ours is not the first inscription which relates to the putting up of a granary as a fortification against scarcity of food. Of practically the same period is a copper plate found at Sohgora. Where's this? About 14 miles southeast of Gorakhpur, EUP. This was first edited in Buller in the Vienna Audi journal. After. Okay, can't read this. Badua and Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. Yeah, see. Annals of, I know what this means. Annals of Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute. After by Fleet in JRAS 1907. And lastly by Professor B.M. Badua in Annals of Bhandarkar Oriental Research Institute, which is a regular sort of a news digest that they come up with collections of great papers. A cursory glance at its contents will convince anybody that it refers not to one but two granaries. But the inscription, in spite of the fact that it has been revised thrice, has not yet been properly punctuated, read and interpreted. The last line should have been read Atiyaikaya no Gahita Vaya. Nothing should be taken in excess of plenty. Our record speaks of two Atiyaikas, one of which is Suatiyaika. It is this Atiyaika which is probably understood at the end of the Sohgora copper plate. Okay. So, similarly, this last epigraph speaks of the granaries being stored with various provisions. In fact, if any fourth scholar makes an attempt to again revise the Sohgora inscription in the light of our record, he may be able to show that the former also is an order to some Mahamatra, okay, probably Sravasti, to open the two granaries and distribute their contents when any dire contingency called for it. Okay, तो ये दोनों inscriptions ही messages हैं वो एक local Mahamatra को कि ये करो, थोड़ा help कर दो. In fact, the idea of counteracting the ravages of a famine by the erection of granaries and storehouses is pretty ancient in India, and it is not therefore a matter of surprise if the Mahasthan inscription also adverts to the measures commonly employed by the state to combat the devastations caused by a famine in ancient Bengal. Wow. So when I'll name this video, it can be named in another way, that how different it was. So famines in Bengal later and famines in Chanakyan or Mauryan times, how that was different. Interesting. Give me some name suggestions what I will name this video when I cut this portion out and upload it separately. It is not therefore so devastations caused by a famine in ancient Bengal. Let us now see what further light our record throws on the ancient history of Bengal. It is unfortunate that the first line of the inscription has not been preserved. The name of the ruler, if any was mentioned, is thus lost irretrievably. But as the alphabet and the language of our record are exactly like those of the Ashokan edicts, it is not impossible that he was a prince of the Mauryan dynasty. We have already seen that the language of this epigraph is the language of Madhya Desha influenced by the Magdhi. Madhya Desha is Madhya Pradesh. It was really the language of the Mauryan court in Magad, which owing to its outgrowing imperialism had spread not only over the whole of Madhya Desha but also over parts of conterminous, I don't know what, places nearby it. Places like Kalsi in Dehradun district, Dhauli in Puri, and Jaugada in Ganjam district, where also the 14 rock edicts of Ashoka have been found, were never included in Madhya Desha. And yet we notice that these recensions are couched in the Madhya Desha Magdhi dialect, which had become the lingua franca of almost the whole of North India. We now see definitely that this lingua franca had spread even to Bengal and was in vogue there as early as the 3rd century BC, as our inscription conclusively proves it. It is true that Brahmanism took a long way to spread over Bengal. In fact, there is no evidence to show that Brahmanism had any firm hold over this province earlier than the Gupta period. The Aitareya Brahmana no doubt speaks of the sage Vishwamitra as having adopted Sunasepa as his son and caused much chagrin, annoyance to the first 50 of his 100 sons, who were therefore cursed by him to live on the borders of the Aryan country. The descendants of these exiled sons of Vishwamitra, we were further informed, formed the greater bulk of the Dasyus, and one of these Dasyu tribes specified in the Brahmanas was the Pundras, who at that time must have been settled around the Mahasthan and can be recognized and can be still recognized in the Puros, an aboriginal caste in Bengal. Okay, but the problem is Mahasthan was a Shaivite spot, and if Shaivism is included as Hinduism later on, or maybe even then it becomes a conflict. So about which fact was discovered earlier versus later. When was it discovered that Mahasthan is a famous Shaivite spot? The utmost that this tradition mentioned in the Aitareya Brahmana indicates is that some scions of the Vishwamitra family carved tiny kingdoms in the countries of the alien tribes. And this, I think, must be pretty ancient, at 3,500 years. Because Bodhayana, when they speak of Bengal in the same tones, is also 3,000 years old. But here we are talking about 300 to 400 BC. So in that 600 years, I think it changed. This does not, however, show that Aryan culture had spread to the Pundra or any other country, far less imbibed by these people there. The Aryan culture seems for the first time to have been disseminated in ancient Bengal by the Jainas. Yeah, this is the Marxist view, which is not very updated. This is clear from the fact that the Kalpa Sutra, an ancient scripture of the Jainas, mentions not one but three shakhas of the Godasa Gana of Jain monks named after the three places in ancient Bengal, namely Tamralipti, Kotivarsha and Pundravardhan. Of these, Tamralipti is the same as Tamluk in Midnapur, where Shubhendu Adhikari is the representative. Kotivarsha, the same as Bangar in Dinajpur. Is this the same as Bonga? I've never heard of this place called Bangar. And Pundravardhana, the same as Mahasthan in the Bogra district of Bengal, which is now in Bangladesh. It is curious to note that while Bihar and Kosala were taken up by the Buddha and his adherents, Bengal was selected by Mahavira and his followers for their proselytizing activities. Yes, because the Brahmins were not really proselytizing. So which is better, proselytizing or not proselytizing? It is true that no traces of this original Jainism are now left in Bengal. Yes, because people had to save their lives. और तुम चुपचाप बैठे रहोगे तो हो गया. But even as late as the middle of the 7th century AD, the Chinese pilgrim Yuan Shuang testifies to the Nigrantha Jainas being numerous in Pundravardhana. Very recently, a copper plate charter was discovered during excavation at Paharpur in Bengal, which is dated GE 159 or 477 AD, and registers a grant for the worship of Arhats at a vihara situated not far from this place and presided over by the disciples of the Nirgrantha preceptor of Guhanandin. No reasonable doubt can thus be entertained as to Jainism, especially Nirgranthism, having been prevalent in Bengal up till the 7th century AD, and it is these Jainas settled in Tamralipti, Kotivarsha and Pundravardhana who for the first time in the Mauryan period appeared to have carried Aryan culture to ancient Bengal. This, however, at the most may explain the employment of the Brahmi alphabet in our inscription, but the use of the court language of Patliputra is a clear indication of Bengal, at any rate North Bengal, being included in the Mauryan dominions, the Varendra Bhumi. Okay, so the last point of historical interest that we have in this topic. The last point of historical interest that we have now to consider is who were the Samvangyas. Suppose that was the name really, supposing that was the name really intended. Samvangyas is the first place reminds us of Samavajis. We know that to the account of Fulichi or Vridji by Yuan Shuang, a note is added by the commentator saying that Fulichi was in North India and the North people called it the Samavaji country. On this point, Beale, another historian, makes the following pertinent comment that the country of the Vrijis, और अच्छा व्रजवासी ब्रजबुली ये सब वर्ड यहीं से आया है क्या? The country of the Vrijis or Samavrijis, that is United Vrijis, was was that of the confederated 8 tribes of the people called the Vrijis or Vajjis, one of which vis-a-vis that of the Lichavis dwelt at Vaishali. Just as the 8 confederate clans of whom the Vajjis were once the most important were called collectively the Samavajjis or the United Vajjis, it is not at all unreasonable to conjecture that there were some confederate clans in East Bengal who were similarly conglomerated under the collective term of Samavangiyas. Okay, another thing to notice here, people who have been following my Bengali Itihash live streams, do you notice that this is the exact way even Nihar Ranjan Roy has written his Bengali book? I think this was basically the sentence construction that was followed by historians of those days. Many times Nihar Ranjan Roy has said it like this, that মানে এইটা অনুমান করা পুরোপুরি ভুল নয় বা এইটা অনুমান করা পুরোপুরি অসত্য নয় বা পুরোপুরি হাস্যকর না, এরকম জিনিসপত্র আর কি, দ্যাট it's not completely unreasonable to conjecture. This shows that the most prominent of these at the beginning was the Vangiyas. So M is obviously Anuswara. Vangiyas, after whom the confederation was styled the Samavangiyas or the United Vangiyas. The second point to be noted here is that the people of East Bengal are now called Vangas, and it may be asked, where was the necessity of coining a name which is an obvious derivative from it, namely Vangiya? If we now turn it to Vagu, is that Vagu? What that letter is destroyed. And the Matsya Puranas, and study the chapters dealing with Bhuvana Rinyasa, we find that they mention the 2 allied clans, Pravangas and Vangevas. I see. Probongo or Bongeo. Okay, Bongeo or Probongo. Pravangas and Vangevas. V is probably Y, Antasthya. But be it noted that there is none which has been called Vanga. Secondly, the second of these names, namely Vangeya, comes so close to the Vangiya of our inscription that our inscription being earlier than any of these Puranas and being a genuine record of its time, Vangiya must doubtlessly be considered to be the original name Vangiya, and the reading Vangeya of the Puranas thus becomes a corrupt form or the Apabhrangsha form of it. Okay, now one point to note here is that even if Aryan culture, Brahmanic culture did not reach Bengal, so-called, even if the worship of Shiva in Mahasthan is probably not Aryan enough, or not Brahminical enough, or not Hindu enough, even then, the biggest takeaway from this, what I've read so far in this article, is that look at how they were treating us. Okay, the Mauryans were treating the so-called outsider state as an administrative, and they were running it better, and they were treating it better than how Mughals treated this place and the people of this place when they were actually ruling it directly by living here. Okay, that is the point to note. British, when they were ruling it as if it's their direct culture, and there were lots of Christians here, Muslims, when Islam was spreading to this place, even then they were treating these places, the Muslims and the Christians were treating these places worse than how it was being treated by the so-called Brahmins and Aryans, when Brahminism and Aryanism had not even apparently been spread to this place. So, which is more respectable? Which culture should we identify with? If at all there are multiple options to choose from. Okay. So Vangiya is the ancient name. Vangiya must doubtlessly be considered to be the original name, and the reading Vangiya of the Puranas thus become a corrupt form of it. Again, the fact that Pravangas are coupled with Vangiyas, wrongly called Vangeyas, in these early Puranas shows that they were confederated clans and fell under Samavangiyas. I had never heard this word. And further, the reference to the Samavangiyas in connection with Pundra Nagara goes to indicate that the Pundras also belong to the Samavangiya confederacy. And just as in the time of the Buddha, the capital of just as in the time of the Buddha, the capital of the Samavajji confederacy was Vaishali, which was the headquarters not of the Vajjis but of the Lichavis, who were then prominent. It seems that in the time of our inscription, the capital of the Samavangiyas was Pundranagara, which was the headquarters not of the Vangiyas but of the Pundras, after whom it was undoubtedly called Pundranagara, and which is today in Bangladesh. This was insane.
जय जय हे महिषासुरमर्दिनि रम्यकपर्दिनि शैलसुते